Thank you all for coming. Busy week. So.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. As you can see, we're here at the Glass House of Villa Necchi Campiglio in Milan. We're here today for a talk all about the kitchen as the hub of the home. My name's Amy Frisson. I'm editor-at-large for Dezeen. And we're curating a series of talks all week in partnership with Gaggenau. This is number 2. And I'm joined today by 3 fantastic speakers. We have George Yabu and Glenn Pushelberg from Yabu Pushelberg. I'm sure you're all familiar with an interior design studio based in Toronto and New York. And then we have Andrea Molteni, who is collaborating with these 2 on a project, which I'm sure they're going to tell you about very soon. Andrea is now Vice President of Molteni & C and Head of Product Development at Dada. And to start with, they're each going to introduce themselves. So why don't I let you hand over to you guys to introduce yourselves properly.
It's so embarrassing introducing myself. I'm part of Yabu and Pushelberg. They call me Yabu, no. Yabu Pushelberg, we've been around over 40 years, working. We've transformed ourselves into a multidisciplinary firm, doing interiors, products, art consulting, lighting consulting, decorative arts.
All those categories we've touched on in our work, in our core business, but it made sense to go deeper in those fields. Yeah.
Well, and I'm Andrea Molteni again. Thank you for the introduction before. Vice President of Molteni & C and Dada, our kitchen firm. It's a family business. We've been around for 87 years this year, so it's quite a long experience, let's say, in the field. And we've been lucky to collaborate with George and Glenn for quite a long time, actually. We started off with some experiences on contract projects in New York and other experiments. And so we know each other quite a long time.
Yeah, so we've got an interesting panel today in that our 3 speakers all know each other very well and are collaborating. And in that sort of spirit, they're going to give a joint presentation to kick us off and show us some projects. So, George, why don't you go ahead?
We did this project as an article that was published in a magazine in North America.
It was a COVID article, right?
It was a COVID, yeah. What's the future of living, what's living in residences during COVID? Obviously, it forced us to make the home more flexible, not so rigid in its purpose in specific space. And that came, you can say that came naturally, but you can also say it came about unnaturally because we were forced to this unusual social event that we never experienced before. So we talked about, not about modularity in terms of squares, but modularity in terms of puzzles. Because oftentimes you have a house that is perfect. So the puzzle is a bit more flexible in its use. So we talked, and this is just a diagrammatic notion of how we came about to a series of modules based on post-in beams. But the diagram of the puzzle was very important because often it's a renovation and not a new build. So this is a very abstract floor plans that are basic. And if you see, sometimes what we thought was we put all the functions like in a staging set, all these things that working, dining, drinking, all those functions disappear below. And then the courtyard, as you see, it's imperfect. It's not a perfect square. There's traffic flow, very, very important that there's many options. For its privacy, semi-privacy, and being collectively together in space. And it was just a theoretical notion of by doing so, there's a lot of open spaces, open to the sky above and the courtyard to the left, and open courtyard in the middle and enclosed atop on the left. There's different variations of that. And so it was interesting to be forced into a situation that people really, really thought about how you want to live, because I think they took the time to really understand.
We had to. We
Yeah,
were
we
forced,
had
I
to.
guess, at some stage.
Can I,
And then-
can I go back?
yes.
Can I go back for a second,
if I
George? I think
can.
what some of the things that are interesting relative to. Can we go back?
No, I don't know. I'm just going
Oh my
forward.
gosh! And
If I go back,
it
I might
goes
screw
one.
it up.
But I think,
Now you're next.
but that's okay. But I think one of the interesting things about the diagrams was the relationship. What is the kitchen and the relationship of the kitchen? And we had the kitchen. There we go. Opening and closing. If you look at the lower left, so the kitchen functions as a conventional kitchen from before. Yes, we have to cook, we have to eat, but we realize also that if we can get some sort of modularity, some flexibility, it opens up, it becomes a form of entertainment. We hide part of the kitchen, we expose part of the kitchen. There was a food writer that once said to us, the origins of the socialization of the human being came around a fire of cooking. I think that's kind of true in essence. And I think that, we talk about the evolution of the kitchen. We in the 50s and 60s and 70s, cooking was where the family met and we all had to gather. But now cooking has become the art of entertaining. So we still all cook, but we do it more for our friends and not less of an obligation. So function of kitchen changes. Sorry, I rambled.
That point up in the upper left corner where this hydraulically, the living room drops to the lower level, where all the staging is down in the basement, and it's brought
Oh
back
yes,
up again.
theater.
Yeah.
Theater. Okay.
Can I ask before we move on to hear a little bit more about kind of, obviously this was kind of, you said, George, that this was sort
This
of
is theory.
a real kind of voyage of discovery, I suppose.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
think was kind of the most surprising thing you've sort of found along this journey of kind of trying to unpick what the kitchen is?
Yeah. The notion of kitchen as social center has always been that way for, I guess in modern history. But as Glenn said, it started out of need, and now you see how that is part of the environment, but it also closes up into a box.
We're going to show you in a little bit, or when we
I guess what I wanted to add to that invisibility of the kitchen, sometimes you want that, but you want to, when it reopens, when that hidden kitchen that you see and that you use and that you entertain from closes up, the magic can happen when it reopens again and it transforms itself into an after-dinner bar, for instance.
You'll see a little less theoretical example of that in what we
Yeah.
accomplished together.
So you-
There is a link. Yeah.
You guys want to move on?
Yeah, let's talk about these things. We were doing experimentation with Andrea about the nature of kitchens. We were thinking back to George's heritage about this influence of the Japanese kitchen or Japanese screens and stuff. And compositionally, we think kitchens, because they are part of your living environment, don't have to look like conventional kitchens anymore. They can have an aesthetic of their own that fits comfortably into the living environment.
Also, I said earlier that there has to be flexibility in your spaces. So this kitchen system can be an office, for example, very easily. So what we did is we did a series of upper modules. Some of them could be cabinets, some could be open, a combination of the two. And like the puzzle, diagrams of the puzzle, it does really, really make it flexible for like bookshelves, for instance, in this case. So it could be an office. Instead of a sink, or it could be a wet bar. You don't need the bar with the sink there. It could be an office filing system in the cabinets on the left, etc.
We also think we're experimenting with things like color. It's a little difficult, especially when you're doing modular kitchens, to sell that dream. But we do think it's actually, even looking at the Gaggenau installation behind us, the use of kind of quiet, stormy blue grays and stuff along with blacks. There is I think, a movement back to this subtle color in kitchens.
And talking to someone the other day about that, I think what it was this unprecedented event made us think, well, I'm here, I'm really studying it, studying my living environment more carefully, more considered. And I thought, my day-to-day was like, rush. I don't want to think about it. Make the kitchen neutral. you know, in the selection. But now that I'm home and I'm in this situation, I mean, we need more
Should be more
soulfulness,
vibrant, yeah.
more soulfulness to think, and so they maybe take chances and go for an unusual green.
More vibrant. A
Yes,
little bit.
more, and I think normally we probably wouldn't, like people have become very practical, and now this thing's, well, you know, I have the time to cook now. Maybe I want a little bit of passion, a little bit of verve, a little bit of soul. You know,
And also, I
motive
guess
part.
on one end, we studied quite a lot during the presentation. Of course, the kitchen needs to be functional in the end. It's a machine, it's a small machine that needs to work, it needs to be used. Of course, we're here guests of Gaggenau who are putting in probably the cogs in the machine with their beautiful appliances
The
and
most
everything.
beautiful appliances on earth.
So also the aesthetics of the functionality part of kitchens is changing quite a lot over the years and becoming more and more prominent and more elegant. So the way we design kitchens and we make the two elements interact is also quite interesting.
I think that I think what you said is Gaggenau's state-of-the-art appliances, extremely so. They can take that and honor it, and so we had to keep up with that in our own way. Can you explain the feature of the bottom rail disappearing? Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
comes
guess.
up later, Jordan.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, 'cause
Let's
this is your-
let's run through the
Okay,
slides.
let's
It'd be
run
great
through
to-
this quickly.
Let's circulate so everyone knows
I
the
did want to
project
say,
a little bit more.
Oh yeah,
so.
this is actually this is an interesting kitchen. This is a custom kitchen that the Molteni Dada Group is building for us for the best residents in Tokyo. It's be a branded Amon residential building in Toronto, Amon, the highest building, and they took upon this notion of doing this big kitchen for us, and we broke down the island in this kitchen, so it's a series of cabinets. You'll see in our Tivoli adaptation kitchen that we see the kitchen is not only for displaying your bowls and your mixers and all of that, but it could be for books, it could be for artifacts or accessories.
No, I think and it was part of the discussion, and I think mainly one of the themes that we'll be exploring today and discuss, and hopefully hear your ideas as well, or questions about it, is really the role of the kitchen inside the house, which is, as they said, it was as the primordial fire that brought us together during the cooking, is going back to be probably the center of all activities in the house, and this is reflected also in the design and in the features that we try to incorporate in kitchens, as you were saying, for this project. Of course, it's a hugely representative kitchen. It's a residential development.
But it's not a kitchen.
But it's not a kitchen.
100%. Always.
It's a dining
24/7
area.
is not a kitchen in itself. A single
I
purpose.
think if you go back historic, if you look at, like, for example, the Molteni closet systems they have, or shelving systems, or you look at we're doing a project with Salvatore, who has product here as well, and their bathrooms, the evolution of closet systems to something more elegant than a basic closet, the evolution of bathrooms to something that is more special and purposeful, because you flow in and out. We live in a more natural way, less compartmentalized way. And so all of these things, you relate that to kitchens also as a further evolution of something that can stand alone and be part of your bigger environment. Okay. We're going on and on. We should go faster, maybe. That's more of this kind of similar kitchen system. So it becomes a little bit like a symmetrical shrine in this case, but it has gravitas to it. It has an inner beauty, and to me, it's like a series of modular bookshelf rather than kitchen.
Yeah, underneath the kitchen. And so this display vitrines. It doesn't have to be pots and bowls and things. It could be books or cookbooks and things.
Yeah.
And also the usual snack bar, which
Yeah.
is usually a hanging shelf on the side, becomes a dining table. So it's really more of a space, not for the occasional 5-minute snack in the morning, but it's really a dining area where you sit with your family or clients.
Oh, here we go.
Just different activities that can happen at once in that kitchen.
This is our presentation.
Yeah.
With you.
And this is, let's say, how we finalized the project that we presented this year with Tivoli. in the interpretation of Yabu Pushelberg. As Dada, as Molteni, we've always been trying to explore, again, the functionalities of products, and being a highly technical company, we try as much as we can to develop our own technical systems. We patent them, we do a lot of research. And Tivoli was something we had in our collection for quite a long time, but we wanted to update it to make it a bit different. So together with them, we gave them the, let's say, the framework of the project.
Can I ask, what year was the original Tivoli system?
Good question, but I think it would be
Or
probably
what-
around 20-something years ago now.
Okay.
So,
Let's talk about the base.
and yes, the original Tivoli, which is this, let's say, we'll go further on. It's a pocket door system, and it was conceived as a standalone kitchen with a top rail and bottom rail that connected the two sliding doors. These, of course, was quite innovative 20 years ago, but it then ran out of technical advancement over the time, and we wanted to keep it fresh. So we did a lot of engineering with our team to remove the bottom rail, and now the whole sliding system is just hanging from the top.
Just floating,
shelf.
suspended.
Yeah, and
without
suspended.
torquing.
And the let's say the structural element really becomes just a portal in the end. This gives complete freedom to whoever is designing the interior to do whatever they want with it. And this was more or less the task that we
And-
challenged
And
them.
a big advantage of that, removing the bottom rail without torquing, is that the counter, working height counter, is at the correct level. Otherwise, we had to raise the appliances and drawers, and it's a little too high for most people. It would be higher than 90 centimeters.
Can I ask
Awkward.
the sort of the difference between the Tivoli, original and now the sort of 2.0 version? The kind of changes you made, would you say they're kind of more in response to changes in innovation or in changes in terms of lifestyle and how people use the kitchen, or both? It's a nice comparison,
It's
isn't
a
it?
bit of both, I guess.
That's a good question.
It's one end, for sure, it's a technical innovation for the sake of innovating. We need always to try to push forward our ideas. In the other end, it's part of what we're saying today. Kitchens today are changing in their functionality. We cannot be constrained only by one way of using it. And so to give designers, architects, whoever and end users in the end, the possibility of flexibility of making their own configurations and ideas, that was also the drive behind what we did as technical advancements with this product.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things here that of course, in this model, there's no upper shelves. It's really a bookcase system, which gives a lightness to it. And I think if you're using your kitchen more for entertaining than day-to-day cooking, you could do that. Obviously, there would be other modules that would have a storage in it.
Enclosed modules above.
Yeah.
What you're saying,
Now
or
we're
combination,
experimenting with-
ideally a combination.
As we advance the product, we are looking at how the boxes work above and how they become elegant, or do we put little drawers above and stuff. So it's really breaking down the history of what kitchens were. The other thing is that break in the
The
you wanna talk about
wings
break
on
in
the
counter,
side.
George?
Yeah, it was it was a little bit, I wouldn't say controversial, but it had a lot of questions from Molteni group about these wings that swing out. And I just felt that you can be psychologically, you're the conductor, you're the orchestrator of whatever's happening, and it's like being in a cockpit. But on a practical level, there's two things that are really great about this Delta wing projecting out. It's extra space when you have the help to drop off and pick up. And then the second most important practical thing is that we have kitchens that are not as kitchen appliances that are not as incredible as Gaggenau, say North American kitchens that are deeper. So it allows for differences in depth of the appliances.
And I will just have
adjacent
to ask
it.
Gaggenau to do slanted cooktops.
Yes,
Fit
Yeah.
perfectly into
we
the
will help. I do think we think about, maybe it's a little bit of projecting ourselves. When we cook to entertain. Our friends cook with us. Or if it becomes a bar, you have a party, everybody ends up in the kitchen, and everybody's serving drink. Friends are serving drinks or whatever. And by doing that slicing, it gives little sections for people to work at.
It's interesting, you were sort of saying about, the sort of idea of the idea of theatre in the kitchen really kind of becoming more and more of a thing, and the idea of entertaining. I mean, also being British myself, I always think back as kind of the history of rooms and kitchens being this sort of very small separate box
Right.
away. And, you know, increasingly more and more that's no longer relevant. And I'm wondering whether, is that kitchen dead? You know, is it always now, it's always about being more open and creating a space for theatre and for entertaining?
It's funny.
You would always want that. Being out there, I said, "Wow, shit, what a mess!" You know, a great dinner, but what a mess. But you know, just go away and go to the living room, have a drink. You know, the beauty of it is that you can just close it up.
You maybe have
Deal with it later.
the quiet kitchen at the back, where you hide everything away.
You do see that occasionally in kind of more Asian cultures, that there's a separated kitchen for working. I was thinking back on the weekend, I was up at an old friend's house, old friend's home in Como, and it's been a home her mother's home that's been around for 50 years, and we all ended up, although we had the incredible view of the lake, we ended up at the back of the house in the old kitchen, making cocktails and soup bowls and stuff. But I don't know, it goes back to this notion of fire and the hearth, the social environment, wherever the kitchen is, but it is by default in that case, it's by intent.
By intent, sure. Yeah.
But touching on that, who knows? Because again, as you said, maybe Asian cultures we see, and we work quite a lot on an international project globally. And for example, there's quite a huge, it's almost like a standard for residential projects over in Asia, where you have what you would call a wet kitchen, which is backstage, more traditional, let's say, you know, the more practical side. And you have a dry kitchen right in front, which is more exactly for entertaining, for appearances, let's say. So, and sometimes we see that also kind of starting also in our projects, let's say over this side of the...
Yeah, we're seeing sometimes in bigger homes, this is right now in Asia, but it can happen anywhere, where the kitchen is split, to your point, where there's the cooking one part and there's another entertaining kitchen that is maybe off another part of a great room. And then sometimes we even have we call a midnight kitchen off a master, which also is a little bit of a wet kitchen and stuff. So it's interesting how all of this is breaking down from the conventions that we think of kitchens.
That's interesting as well, actually, and I think it sort of reminded me of a project actually I visited recently, which is a co-living space where it's sort of a household of sort of 20 people,
Right.
and they have a big sort of shared room with this incredible kitchen where, you know, they all sit and eat together, but they have a kind of kitchen in the back where if they don't really want to chat to their housemates, they can kind of have a little, the microwave kitchen in the back where they zip behind and microwave their pasta and disappear back to their rooms, I suppose. So yeah, I suppose that dichotomy is really interesting. And you two must have seen, I mean, you know, you worked a lot of fantastic kind of residential projects and also across hospitality. Sure. What do you kind of find when people come to you and talk to you about what they want in the kitchens? What are the things that people really kind of come and say, this is my dream for my kitchen?
I think it's the notion that they can really get it together and create this wonderful meal to socialize. Thankfully, with a company like Gaggenau, I was just having a walk through this wonderful exhibit, and I saw this steam cooking feature, and it was like performance art. So anything that makes it easier for you to do, I think a lot of, especially in North America, you know, they want to do it, they want to impress, but they don't want to look like failures too. And so it's a distraction. When you see the steam cooking and all that, it's a lovely performance distraction.
I do think that at the upper end of the market of kitchens, there is this. It's a little bit of status. It's like having a fine car with the best appliances and the best looking kitchen. It's a sense of authority, but it obviously still functions as a place to gather.
And I think maybe also touching on that, and was something we discussed also quite a lot during the let's say preparation of all the project. It's also about materials as well. Yes. You know, we talked a lot about functionalities, design, layouts, and everything, but it's also the materiality and what are the new elements that now build kitchens. We were used to very, very technical and maybe, I would say, clinical kitchens at some stage, because you need to clean them, you need to... and now we're seeing globally that, and especially I can go back to maybe this images, which is quite exemplary. The materials that we see, that interior designers, architects are more keen and more curious to explore, are really more emotional and more material, more natural, with natural stone coming in strongly, not just for the countertops, but for backsplashes and woods and raw metals, which I guess we also see reflected in this presentation here with
Do you think the sustainability is kind of driving a lot of those decisions? You know, the sort of the choice of natural stone as opposed to synthetic, or you know, kind of really kind of understanding the value of having, you know, natural wood products in the kitchen and the kind of, you know, the benefits that brings.
For sure, it's a theme for sure. It's then if it's just the driving theme, I'm not sure. It's a component to it. I think the deeper real motive behind it is really more emotional. It's really more of a raw necessity, and maybe also we've been in lockdowns, we've been through the pandemic, and people really want to reconnect with nature. And we see this also in the design of the architects and the interior designers we work with. They always try to push more into these aesthetic. These are, for example, some other kitchens we've done where again, natural stone, lighter tones, lighter colors, and wood are coming as the main ingredients for kitchen design today.
Yeah, if you get the materials right, I think there's a lot more longevity to it, to the kitchen.
And I do think the issue of sustainability is in front of us, and we are trying to deal with it in the best possible way, but it is early stages. We should be clear.
And we have we've put together a team, you know, basically a separate team from our designers that are doing research on sustainability. And we've actually learned a lot from. It was very, very kind of Foster and Associates to invite us to London to talk about sustainability because they're really taking it more seriously. So it inspired us to do not just to, you know, to practice it, but to actually research a new level of sustainability.
And what if,
But it's a process.
So it's we just established that's a process.
just at the start?
We're research. Yeah, we're asking to be. We're inviting ourselves to other consultants, design practicing. What are you doing?
So we can learn faster and be more appropriate for the future.
Yeah, collectively it's just faster.
So this time
coming
next
at
year,
us fast.
this time next year we'll be back here to
Now we're sweating.
your
Yeah,
findings.
Let's see how fast we go, but we're trying.
And I mean, we couldn't have a discussion about the kitchen without talking about the pandemic. Obviously, the function of the kitchen changed a lot when people's homes are having to work harder. But I'm curious to know, I guess, what the long-term impact of that is. You know, people are getting back to work now. Things are sort of getting back to some semblance of what they were like before. But do you think are there sort of takeaways? Like, will the kitchen be sort of changed permanently as a result of the way that people were having to use their kitchens during the pandemic?
I think it's life in balance. That's what we all talk. I think that's what resonated from COVID. Is life in balance. Do we come back to work 40 or 50 hours a week anymore or not? Probably not. Life is more fluid. People that have children and stuff, there's more need to be at home and work and stuff. Of course, I believe it's going to change the kitchen some. It's going to help the evolution to make the way we live and work at home more appropriate. Do we need to fold it away because we're going to be there more times of the day or not? Do we need to integrate our appliances more carefully into how they work and stuff? Of course, all of it does change. Society has changed.
At some stage, I think also we'll see where the interior design world will go, and at some stage interior design is reacting to external factors. Sometimes I think also believe the design of your house is also a big component to how you live, not only your house but your life as well. As designers, as architects, that there's almost a social responsibility in how you design your projects and things. And will we go back? There's a bit of a risk, I think, at some stage that things would go to the hectic, crazy world. We'll see now we're in Salone del Monte.
Living this week.
That everybody said, oh, after the pandemic, who knows what's going to happen? And
but that's
just
what's the
2
beauty.
days of Salone and we're back at the crazy queues in Milano.
But then the beauty of Tivoli 2.0 is that it doesn't have to be, I'm going to highlight what I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a kitchen 24/7.
Yeah. So in that sense, I mean, probably how we're going to design the house and the kitchens of today and tomorrow will maybe also affect how we go back to living in the house.
Have you sort of through Molteni sort of seen any particular kind of trends in the kind of projects, or the, you know, have customers' habits or kind of desires changed a little bit since then? Are they kind of more wise to this idea of the kitchen having to work harder?
Work harder, you mean for?
I guess in terms of multifunctionality.
Probably yes. Probably yes. We've seen it on one end. It's probably not just a home office concept, or you know, being stuck at home and having your kids running around and having to find an office somewhere and do your Zoom calls from the closet or something like that. For sure, I think especially for kitchens, really the strongest direction we're seeing is that kitchens are really more and more becoming really the center of the house. It's really almost a generating element, as they were expressing during the first stage of the presentation, through the whole concept of how we're restructuring a new home. The kitchen is the first area where we see interior designers and clients really focusing on. We work globally on projects, not just with them, with renowned architects in the US, in Asia. And I'm always quite amazed because we get this development rendering packages from developers and architects, and the first one is usually the beautiful tower in Miami with the sunset. The second one is the entrance, which is like a hotel with a limousine parked in front. The third one is always a kitchen somehow. It's never a living room, it's a kitchen. And I think that speaks to the importance that in people's life kitchens now have. If these incredible projects and the developers that are investing millions and millions are pointing as marketing to really put a kitchen right in front there and to use it as a sales element, I think that's an interesting aspect to take in consideration, let's say.
And George and Glenn, you obviously work a lot across hospitality, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the role of the kitchen in hotels or hospitality. You know, is that also changing? Is there anything you've kind of noticed?
It is interesting in some of the best hotels on earth, when you get to the premium suite, the presidential suite. I don't know how many presidents stay in presidential suites, but you do now see performance kitchens in those big suites where they bring the chef in from the hotel and do special event cooking, kind of like here. And so you're breaking down the kitchen, but it is an integrated part of the interior. You also see kitchens now in pre-function spaces outside of, because again, they don't look like kitchens, but they're places to gather before you go into a meeting room or a ballroom and stuff. So they become an integrated part of the hotel experience, for sure.
And what about technology is a big part of you know, this project, and obviously things that Gaggenau does. And do you think technology and innovations might also be sort of shaping where the future of the kitchen is going? Like, sort of looking ahead, can you see other big changes that might be kind of brought on by changes in technology?
I'm going to take a leap here, because I think appliances, exhausting, of course, now is going down, so you don't have the hood in front of you, so you can speak to people. I think that the cooking surfaces I see over there, sometimes they become very flat and integrated to the surface. Sometimes they're more expressive. I think all of those things you think about, not only the function of heat and cooking, which is super important. Gaggenau's figured that out years ago, but how it looks and how it's integrated or how it's expressed. I think all of those points, the integration of appliance to kitchen, are super thoughtful, and so it goes back to how you believe that a particular kitchen is going to function.
I think now might be a good time for some audience questions, if we have some questions from the floor. Don't be shy. If anyone has a question, please raise a hand. Anyone? Here we go. We have a gentleman in the front. If you could please stand up, that'd be wonderful. So our live stream audience can see
I'm
you.
from Vancouver, so I am from the most casual place in the world, so forgive my lack of a suit. All three of you tend to cater to a very specific buyer and demographic, and it feels like to me post-COVID luxury has changed. Used to be about external signaling. And I'm just wondering, moving away from kitchens specifically, where does luxury go? What does it mean tomorrow? How are we changing and evolving? And
If we only knew, we have a solution right and ready.
Luxury is such a broad topic, and oh gosh, what does luxury mean to you? Yeah, I think in some cases, if you have luxury, can just mean having space or having choice. I think you abstract the word luxury to those kind of topics. If you travel, if you really understand yourself, true luxury is having spatially having space, or being able to adapt space. So that, and I was thinking this morning of a staff member of ours was talking about his new apartment with his wife, and they have 2 wings where each works in a wing part-time because they're working at home part-time. So they're converting their kitchen, they're closing it up like Tivoli, so it becomes a working environment. Or the living room becomes another working environment. I think that in a sense, that's a clue to modern luxury post-COVID, of the ability to adapt and change and not make things temporary or shoved into a corner. Yeah. I think it's thoughtfulness is also luxury.
And then maybe also building on that, again, and now we're talking probably broader concept of luxury, I guess. I think post-COVID, people would probably, and the meaning of luxury will be to think a bit more into the future, I guess. Nowadays, a lot of people manage to have the time to really look at their own life and environment, and I don't want to be too optimistic on one side, but people, I think, will try to invest and really think at luxury for the longer term rather than for the fast fashion and change collection every 6 months and everything. Now people are probably a little more.
You could say luxury is a state of mind, right? Yeah. It's not the materiality of it, but it's that I decide how I'm going to use the space. Yeah. I think more than anything, it is that, and it's less about the tangible.
Yeah. If I can add to that, when we go back to thinking about hotels, for example, the old school way of thinking about hotels was this is where the customer is going to drink, this is where the customer is going to dine, this is where they're going to work. Well, that is all changed and continues to change. It's the customer, the ultimate. A good hotel customer has the choice of where they want to eat, drink, and dine, where they want to be part of a community, social community, where they want to sit back and watch the community, or they want total privacy. If you think about modern hotel lobbies, bars, and restaurants, it's like the home. It's kind of evolved into something that's broken down, and it's real, and giving in a very not having to think way, but a natural way for the customer to decide what they want and where they want to do it at a certain time. To me, that's also luxury.
That's a great answer. You have some.
I was just going to end up saying, I don't want to be obligated to cook if I don't want to. So that's the beauty of this Tivoli that we designed.
That's luxury.
Absolutely. Do we have any more questions? Anyone else have something they'd like to ask? Oh, we have a lady here. If I could ask you to stand as well, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Melanie. I'm an interior designer based between Florence and Los Angeles. I would like to know, understanding the balance between durability and aesthetics, what are some materials that have inspired you recently?
That's a good one. Oh, those are top secret answers.
Okay.
Well,
Also for Molteni, I think, I see here that these are kind of newer materials coming about, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah, there's quite, of course, of research on new materials coming in. It goes a little bit in two directions. We were talking earlier, of course, about the resurgence of stone, of natural woods, of very raw, and that sometimes you would imagine very unfunctional products and materials to be used in kitchens. There's acids, there's grease, there's heat, there's water. So to some extent, that's a bit controversial. I have to say, on the other opposite extent, there's also technology which is helping us in this direction. There's a lot of new processes of manufacturing and coating and protecting for different materials that are making these new materials, these old materials actually, a lot more performant than they used to be.
Yes,
So
the nanotechnology in stone, it makes it
nanotech
more
coatings and
practical,
Yeah.
so you don't have to keep replacing it. I was going to say, to answer your question about, we always think of, in the world of, I guess, luxury, at the top end, we talk about materiality and its prestige of the real deal. But we used to shy away from, for example, porcelain. And porcelain tile, what used to bother us for a long time when it first came out, it was pretending to be stone, natural stone. And now that, we don't have to do that anymore at all. And you were talking about the first class lounge in Doha, about the furniture did the sand, different color, but it was simple walls of porcelain tile that looked amazing. Just
good.
amazing. Yeah.
So I have one now.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
Sorry, people out there listening around the world.
I think the best airport in the world is the Doha airport that Antonio Citterio did. And if you start looking at the materialities of that, those beautiful flat porcelain tiles that he developed for that, I think there's a clue to a simple material that's being elevated. We worked with a company out of France that was doing lava stone and doing a ceramic coating on it, that we're making our own sinks, etc. And so I think there is also this re-evolution of using natural materials and also going back to old, simpler materials and then elevating them depending on the composition in kitchens and bathrooms.
And at some stage maybe also accepting that natural materials have flaws, and they will at some stage stain, we always discuss they ask me, what's the best worktop? And technically stainless steel, and then everybody says, but it scratches so easily, and that's part of the deal. You go into a professional kitchen in a restaurant, it will be stainless steel, incredibly scratched.
I kind of like
That's
that.
how it is.
Glenn likes the wabi-sabi aspect of imperfect perfect, but culturally speaking, that doesn't fly in certain areas of the world. So,
But for us personally, I kind of like that. I like.
Me too.
I like to look at
Some clients, not-
our home in Toronto. We did a stainless steel top with the stainless steel sink integrated, and it is 20 years of being in that kitchen. And we have another kitchen on the second floor we just installed from Molteni that also has an incredibly beautiful stainless steel top and integrated sink that came from Italy. And I don't know, both of them appeal to me, and one maybe intellectually and one emotionally.
It's interesting you're talking about emotion. I mean, the theme of our talk yesterday was about longevity. I mean, it was about sustainability, but longevity specifically. And a kitchen is something that maybe doesn't, in people's minds, have that same longevity as, a piece of antique furniture. But I guess, exactly, I suppose that's my question to you. How do you kind of ensure that you create that sense of longevity in a kitchen?
It's a good, there's no formula to it, I guess.
But I could answer it for you because you guys, the Molteni are the masters of technology, and I think, and Gaggenau are the masters of technology in their fields. And I think if you do something that is thoughtful and that is caring and that it will last a long time because they are at the forefront of the future. And so it's not like buying an IKEA kitchen that you're going to toss out, or an inexpensive kitchen, toss out in 10 years because it'll wear itself out. It will live for 20, 30, or 40, or 50 years. And I think that is one aspect of sustainability that we need to think about. If we can get to that quality, it's like buying a good suit. You don't need 10 suits, you need one suit.
A good suit.
You need a good suit.
A good suit.
I think we have time for one more question if we have any more. Does anyone else have any questions to ask? Doesn't look like we do. You've got a question.
No, I like to talk. I was thinking
Reverse
about
the
when
talk.
we were young and we were kids. We started our design firm. We had very little to nothing, but we loved these Joe Colombo bar stools. Totally impractical as drafting stools. There weren't computers then, but we bought 3 Joe Colombo bar stools as drafting stools. Well, those bar stools I know, well, you wouldn't even know what that is. But 40 years later, those bar stools are in a kitchen in one of our homes, and they've been in other environments, and because they have lasting value through they're intrinsically beautiful. They have meaning to us as an object and stuff. And I think that sustainability, this is there's upcycling, and there's using proper materials, and there's transportation issues around sustainability. But there's also this notion of even if you can only afford so much, buying something of quality and keeping is also a form of sustainability.
And then I also might add that it's my bugaboo working in these residential developments in New York, Miami, wherever, and you're dealing with these real estate, the world of real estate, and trying to sell these luxury units. And I always hear over and over again where these power men and women said, don't give me one of your like sexy kitchens, just give me a plain white kitchen, because they're just gonna tear out your kitchen anyway. And I was thinking it was really, really, not, and they're gonna want to do their own thing. And I was thinking about it, not cool. And I said, one day I couldn't figure out how to get somewhere until finally I said, maybe they're gonna tear out the kitchens because they're so crappy.
Right?
Yeah. Right?
It's reverse thinking.
Yeah, likely. I think we're running out of time, but I'm going to sort of ask you all as a sort of final question. Looking ahead to the future, maybe you can think, maybe even just in a word, or maybe sort of super snappy. What is the future kitchen to each of you?
Oh my goodness.
Dada Molteni kitchen. Easy for me. No, joking.
We stayed the smallest home. It was a vacation home in St. Bart's. Not the best part of the island, but it was so much fun. It was so tiny, this house. The kitchen was on the porch, right? I love that. The kitchen's on the porch, bringing it outside, or that flexibility of, in our dream home, you see in the sketches that green, intervention of green nature in it. But I remember that time when we didn't have much money. We stayed in this tiny little, almost like a hut, but the kitchen was outside on the veranda, and I loved it.
I agree with George.
So the future kitchen is maybe indoor-outdoor. I like that.
Could be. That's another toss to the Gaggenau to develop outdoor appliances.
You can get Gaggenau to make it work outdoors. That'd be great.
Well, on that note, there's something to be thinking for the future. That's all we have time for today. I just want to sort of take a moment to say thank you to all three of you for your fantastic contributions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Gaggenau.
Thank you to Gaggenau for...
And thank you all for coming. Overwhelmed.
And for all of you that are here in person, and also for all of you tuning in at home, and anyone sort of tuning in that's here in Milan and hasn't signed up to come visit Gaggenau's space, it's fantastic. This installation statement of form is well worth a look. So that's it. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.